Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Honeybee Stamps. In this video, we're going to create this fun interactive birthday card with the new Far Out Friends stamp set. I'm going to start today's card by stamping some images from the Far Out Friends stamp set. As you can see, this is a large stamp set with some really great large images. These are really fun to color and build scenes with. So I just arranged some images here on an A2 panel of Neenah cardstock. I'm going to use my MISTI because I'm going to stamp them several times in this Memento Tuxedo black till I get them nice and bold. And now I'm ready to Copic color. I'm going to start by coloring this cute little astronaut. The colors I'm using are on screen so you can follow along. I picked out some light tans, started with E30, which is my lightest. Then I moved on to E31 to add some shadow to define his nose, kind of separate the hair from the face, and just a little bit along the chin. Now I'm going to move on to some yellows for the hair. Started with Y11, and that was my base, and now my medium shade is Y15, and then I moved on to YR23 for my dark. And then once I've gone through those three colors, I go back through with my medium and then my light to kind of blend it out a little bit. Now I'm going to move on to some grays here. This is going to be kind of for his, is that a jetpack on his back and for his kind of neck or his collar. And I added a little bit to the bottom of his boots just to kind of incorporate that gray. Now for the details on his spacesuit, I'm going to use a combination of reds. R17 is my light, then R27 is my medium, and then R46 is my dark. And I'm just going to kind of shade that in a little bit just to add the look of roundness to those areas of his spacesuit. Once I finish with my reds, I'm going to move on to this really light blue here. This is BG10. This is just going to add a little bit of shadow to these areas that I basically want to keep white. I pretty much always use this color for when I'm coloring white. That's just my shadow color. Now I'm just going to color the buttons here on his spacesuit and then do a little cleanup with 0. Now that I'm finished with my astronaut, I'm going to move on to the planet, starting with Saturn here. I have the same tans that I picked out for his skin. I'm going to start with E30 and then E31 for my kind of darker area to just blend that out a little bit. Then I've grabbed a couple golden yellows to kind of color this detail layer on the planet. Started with my lightest, which was YR31, then moved on to YR23. And once I finish adding kind of that darker shadow to make it look round, I'll blend it out with my lighter golden color. Then I grabbed that same YR23 and started on the rings here. Then I moved on to kind of a golden brown and then just a brown to kind of really create that illusion of roundness and has some contrast from the rest of the planet. Now that I finished Saturn, I'm going to move on to Earth. I have a couple greens picked out here, so I colored all the continents in greens, including Antarctica, just to keep it simple. I didn't want to make these planets too busy to distract from, because we're going to have a busy kind of galaxy background as well. So just simplified it a little bit here, then grabbed a couple or 3 blues to create that illusion of roundness here on our Earth with the water and blended that out. Once I finished with the Earth, I moved on to the moon, used the same 3 grays that I used earlier on the astronaut, and then colored the craters with the 2 darkest grays. Now finishing up with this flag, colored the pole with a couple of the grays, and then I'm going to finish the flag itself with the same 3 blues that I used for the ocean on the Earth. I went ahead and die cut my images out with the matching dies, and now I'm going to move on to this large planet here. I have the To the Moon Scene Builder Stencil and Mask set. This set is so great because it works really well or perfectly with the Far Out Friends stamp set. You can see here that this opening in the stencil fits perfectly with that large planet. I just taped it in place, used another piece of cardstock just to block off the other area, which I did not need to do since I die cut my images out. And then I'm going to ink blend this large planet with a couple distress inks. I've started with Spice Marmalade, and then I'm going to darken it or create the illusion of roundness here with a little bit of ripe persimmon. Once I finish that, I'll just remove the stencil. I just did this because it saved a little bit of Copic coloring, and it's so easy to get a really perfect gradation with ink blending, and it just saves a little bit of my alcohol ink. And now I'm going to finish up with coloring a little bit of the craters here to create a gradation and create a little bit more contrast, and then I'll die cut it out with the matching die. I'm now going to trim this large planet down so it'll fit the front of an A2 panel. I'm just going to use this A2 panel of acetate here to just help me get my measurements right, and then I'll just take it over to my paper trimmer and trim off the sides and also that little bit of white on the bottom. Now I'm going to move on to creating my galaxy background. I'm going to start by ink blending some distressed oxide. I'm going to start with Squeeze Lemonade and just kind of ink blend it in this kind of V shape. Once I finish ink blending with the lemonade, I'm going to move on to Pick Raspberry and add that kind of around that lemonade. And then I'll move on to Salty Ocean. I picked these colors because they kind of layer on top of each other nicely. The blue on the pink makes a purple. The pink on the yellow kind of makes a red or orange. And then after I finish Salty Ocean, I'll move on to Blueprint Sketch, as this is going to kind of transition this kind of galaxy to the dark black for space, which is the black soot. I'm just going to ink blend that kind of on the exterior edges. Once I finish with that, I'll kind of go back through all my colors. So now I'm on Blueprint Sketch here, just kind of blending that transition between the black soot and the Blueprint Sketch. Then I'll move on to Salty Ocean, blending that transition between the Blueprint Sketch and the Salty Ocean, and then adding some more of the Pick Raspberry that just kind of beefs up that color. Sometimes that gets lost a little bit. And then lastly finish with the Squeeze Lemonade. Again, kind of enhances that color and does help blend to make the transition between the colors smoother. Now that I've finished ink blending, I'm going to add some water spots. I just sprayed some water out onto my mat, picked it up with a brush, and I'm just tapping my finger on the brush to release this fine little mist of little water spots. This just adds some more atmospheric look to our galaxy background. So now I have my background in my MISTI, and the images kind of arranged how I want them to be just to help me figure out where I want my sentiment to go. This sentiment is from the Stellar Sentiment stamp set. These sentiments work really great with this Far Out Friends set. I just positioned them, picked them up with my MISTI, and now I'm going to stamp them in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I decided to add one more detail to the background. I'm going to add stars. I have some white Gonzai Tombi paint, added some water, and then just picked up the liquid paint with my brush and I'm just tapping again with my finger. I did protect my sentiment with a little scrap of cardstock because if I get any of that white paint on the sentiment, it's going to be difficult to read. So now I'm going to position my images again, figure out where that astronaut will be, and then I grabbed this die from the Straight Interactive Sliders die set, placed it behind where the astronaut will be, and then used a little piece of purple tape to hold it in place, and then ran it through my die cutting machine. This will be the channel for our slider, so I'll just remove the die here, and then I'll flip the panel over, and I'm now going to add some craft foam to the back side of this panel. This is going to add some lift or some space so that our penny, or rather a dime, will be able to slide in the back. You can see that I also made sure to leave a space open around the channel, so again that penny or dime can move freely. So I just adhered them in place, and now I'm ready to adhere this panel on to our A2 top folding white card base. So I have a penny here. I'm going to place that down on the card base before I actually stick them together. So I added the glue to the craft foam. Now I'm going to stick that penny down, and then I'm going to place the panel on top. You could, if you forgot, you can actually feed that penny through the little opening of the channel, but either way works. So I did use a penny here, and I will actually change it later for a dime. I found that the penny was just a little too thick. My craft foam wasn't quite thick enough to allow that penny to move freely, but even still, the process is pretty much the same. I'm going to now add a rectangle of craft foam right onto the penny. I used a tape runner to add adhesive to the craft foam, and then I added it to the penny. And once I have that in place, I'm now going to adhere all my images down. So I'm just going to use liquid glue here and adhere these all straight down onto the card front. Now here you can see I switched it out. I used some tweezers and carefully pulled out that penny and then replaced it with a dime. And then I'm going to again place that rectangle of craft foam on it, and that moves a lot better because the dime is obviously a little bit thinner than a penny. And now I can adhere my astronaut to it. So I'm going to add some liquid glue onto that craft foam and then just stick down my astronaut. I do want to note that I did slide that dime all the way down and then stuck my astronaut down. I just want to make sure I know where the astronaut will be when the dime is all the way down, because that's pretty much how the dime will be most of the time if this card is standing upright. And here's the finished product. And I'll hold it to the camera so you can get a good look at all the details in this fun slider card. This is a very simple interactive card, but when I make a card that I'm going to give to a kid, I'm going to actually give this birthday card to my nephew, I like to always try to include an interactive element, even though there was a lot going on with our ink blended background and our Copic coloring, but I think this card turned out really good and well worth all the effort. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please head over to Honeybee Stamps. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.